everyone. Welcome to the Cinedelphia Film Festival. This is a program that I've been very excited about. It is a man who does not make a lot of public appearances anymore. But for many years he was a staple of the Philadelphia Film Festival, specifically with the genre-oriented Danger After Dark program, which I personally was a huge fan of. I think actually my first Danger After Dark title was Wild Zero, that was in the program, right? Yeah, 2001, a film that I still love a lot. Were you responsible for the Alex de la Iglesia series? Amazing stuff, jeez. So yeah, I'm up here just to keep things lively and motivated, I guess. So here, let's bring up Travis Crawford, ladies and gentlemen.
I would like to mark this on the calendar that I am now the most sober person on the stage for a change.
So for starters, Travis, can you tell us where you've been the past few years?
I was institutionalized, actually. No. The last few years, I programmed Danger After Dark as an adjunct of Q-Fest in 2010 and 2011, and that went well, and I was doing writing on the side. And then in 2012, beginning of 2012, I became involved with being the acquisitions person for the Philadelphia-based distributor Artsploitation Films, which some of you may know was kind of related to TLA Entertainment. There are a lot of the same people there. It's a carryover there and a carryover from the festival and some personnel departments. So we were so busy with Artsploitation Films, and there was so much invested in that, we were not able to do a Danger After Dark last year. We had planned on doing a Danger After Dark in July of this year, sort of related to Q-Fest. The goal was to ultimately spin it off into a separate event, a standalone event, and that was going to be what we were going to do in July. And I alluded in the program guide that I was going to make a big announcement regarding Danger After Dark this July. And so I guess this is the time to do it. It's been canceled. The Philadelphia Cinema Alliance Board of Directors voted 2.5 weeks ago to cancel it. So it's not going to be happening this July. There were too many concerns over cost overruns, and also they felt that it would be best if it was completely divorced from the Q-Fest event. So we are now looking to, when I wrote the notes of the program guide, that was more than 2.5 weeks ago, so my attitude or perspective on it, I should say, was very, very different. And things have changed in the interim. So now we're sort of looking for a time frame and a financial structure to spin it off in its own event, whether that's later this year or next year. But that will happen, and that is something that is planned for now. Should we talk about Danger After Dark in general first?
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess we shouldn't assume that everybody here is familiar with yourself or the program.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, Danger After Dark started, the first year was with what was then called the Philadelphia Festival of World Cinema in 2001. It was late 2000. I had a meeting a few days before Christmas in December of that year when I proposed doing a series called, we didn't even have a name for it, and to be honest, I've never been in love with the name Danger After Dark. It was something that I came up with at the 11th hour with a gun in my head. And we were trying to think of something to call it. I had sort of seen how the Philadelphia Festival of World Cinema in the 90s had kind of become smaller and smaller and more insular, not to disparage anything that they did at that time. And I contacted them and I said, well, look, at that point I'd been writing about genre films for various different magazines for a few years. And I said I would really like to think about doing a genre film series that was influenced by what they were doing with the Midnight Madness program at the Toronto Film Festival. And I contacted them and they said, well, it's funny that you would contact us now because we just sold it to TL Entertainment and they're going to be taking it over for the 2001 festival. So you should contact Ray Murray, the CEO of TLA, and I contacted Ray and he said, well, I like your ideas. I started to develop something similar on my own called Action Asia, a program that only lasted 1 year in 2001. Although it had great films in there, Meek is Dead or Alive, Barking Dogs Never Biting, Wild Zero. That was all part of Action Asia that year, actually, not Danger After Dark. And he said, well, okay, yeah, I think that we could bring you on and do something. And as I mentioned in the notes that I wrote for the festival guide here, The films I programmed, I programmed a 35mm archival print of Female Convict Scorpion Jailhouse 41. When I was walking to the theater that night, I thought, there are going to be like 5 people there. There are going to be like 5 people, there's no one going to be there. And it was a sold-out house. And that was the first key I had that maybe there was an actual interest in this type of film. And the series took off very well. It was very, the first 2 years we were I was sort of learning as I went. There was a lot of stuff that I wasn't really confident with. But 2001, 2002, so I think we're a little bit shaky. 2003 through 2006 were what I would call the golden years of Danger After Dark. We would have sold out crowds for retrospective screenings of Shaw Brothers erotic films. Stuff that I would have never imagined we would have had those crowds for, and it was great. I was able to get most of the films I wanted. Danger After Dark was always sort of an expensive series to run because of trying to get print traffic from Japan and Hong Kong and Thailand and South Korea. Turned out very well. 2007, I'm just giving you a brief history and we can move on. 2007, things became a little rockier. I left after that year. 2008, 2009, I was not involved with the festival at all, and that was actually those 2 years where, I don't know how many of you know about the whole Philadelphia Film Festival thing. The two film societies experienced a divorce and a schism, and they went their separate ways. And I came back in 2010 and 11 to do a sort of Danger After Dark series that would be a part of Q-Fest in July, and that's where we stand now. Again, we wanted to bring that back this year in a more expanded form, but it was not to be. Hopefully it will be for future years. So.
Well, we'd like this to be a casual discussion. So does anyone have any questions right off the bat?
I just want to interject. Can I go ahead with what I was planning on?
Sure.
I was originally going to present a more detailed presentation of Danger After Dark, and then I thought about the fact that the movie we're about to screen, we won't tell you what it is beforehand, it's a full 2 hours long. So I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't do anything too extensive, but to make up for that, I was going to say, if anyone wants to ask the most rude, unprofessional, and pertinent questions that you can possibly think of, I will go ahead and answer them as honestly as I possibly can, so please feel free.
In the back.
What's your real opinion then of the people that took over from the film festival and started programming the alternative to Danger After Dark stuff? Because my take was that the festival started soon after you left, so I don't know.
I think that the Philadelphia Film Festival, as it exists now, and its incarnation in the fall, serves a purpose in that it appeals to in that it appeals to a contingency of the populace that would like to see films, a little bit in advance of their time that they're going to be at the Ritz. Okay, basically, the purpose of the festival now is they show films slightly in advance of, they're films that already have distributors. That entire festival is programmed by people, none of whom live in the Philadelphia region. And it basically exists as a series of sneak previews for previously distributed films that will be opening up at the Ritz theaters or opening on VOD within a 60-day period following their premiere at the Philadelphia Film Festival. That's not really my definition of the film festival, so, or a film festival. Although, for the record, I think that the people that run it are fine. I have no problem with them personally. They're nice people. They intend.
Enough of that.
Yeah.
Do you feel that non-festival aside, do you feel that being connected to Q-Fest has hurt or helped Danger After Dark, or had no effect?
Yeah, that marriage between Q-Fest and Danger After Dark was a marriage of convenience. Really because they were looking to try to get more attendance in late night slots where Q-Fest was a little bit lacking, and so they sort of brought me in.
It seems they already had the venues lined up.
Right, exactly. So the theaters were already booked. That's the whole thing. When they have, the venues booked, we quote unquote own a house at Ritz or Ritz Divorce, whatever, for that time period, and we can put whatever we want in there. So they wanted me to try and do Danger After Dark screenings in 2010, 2011. This is also delicate. I don't think it hurt Danger After Dark or it hurt QFest, but I know that perhaps there were people within QFest that thought that Danger After Dark was not really serving what QFest was there to be, not just cinematically, but also culturally. I mean, if you're doing a festival where, it's really there to sort of advance kind of a progressive agenda about gay and lesbian issues, and then you have me coming in at 10 o'clock showing Big Tit Zombie 3D, there is going to be a little bit of like friction there about like, well...
Friction?
Friction, where there are going to be people saying, well, I'm not sure that this is necessarily what should be going on. So, but I mean, it was never like a big problem. I don't think it was a problem for them. I don't think it was a problem for me. But I think when it came down to what was going to happen this summer, it was a little bit, I think that played a part in,
Just curious.
Yeah.
Over in the corner, please.
We want to ask rude questions. So with Danger After Dark, you're programming genre films, and you're programming what Danger After Dark is and what people expect Danger After Dark to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're programming, you're always programming what you want to do and what you think your audience is expecting of you. So of all of your programming choices within Danger After Dark, what choice are you most embarrassed of that you felt that you needed to program in order to meet genre expectations of festival goers?
Well, I mean, there are, I would never program something, I would never in a million years have programmed Human Centipede 2, which is a film that made me feel like less of a human being after I endured it. I mean, there are films, like Big Tit Zombie 3D, for example, the one I just mentioned, where it's like, okay, I have no illusions that this is a great piece of filmmaking, but I think it's okay. I think it's entertaining to the people that would find that entertaining, and that would extend to, frankly, movies that you might think I would have a higher opinion of than I do. Tale of Two Sisters, The Descent, High Tension. These are not films that were necessarily my personal favorites, but I mean, they were movies that I knew people were going to relate to, and that and I liked them well enough. I thought they were okay. It's just not my personal thing. Whereas I know that, if I program an Estonian film like Temptation of St. Tony, or a film like Dogtooth, that Greek film, it's like, okay, well, if I get 10 people in there, that's fine if I can pay that off with also programming Robo-Geisha. And I like Robo-Geisha, I'm not saying it's a bad film. But so it's always sort of a give and take type of thing. So, I mean, it's really always the way it's been. I mean, even since the beginning. That wasn't an embarrassing question at all, actually. I thought it was going to be much worse.
Did you say bird exploitation to bird exploit, whatever that is?
I asked. Anyone else? Yes.
Were there any movies that you fought over which portion of the festival to be in? Because I sort of, like, from the marketing standpoint, like, it's really nice to have them together, but like Dogtooth, where is that going to get?
Well, Dogtooth, I lucked out because that was at a point where, when we were partnered with QFest, if it was in the old school Philadelphia Film Festival, I probably would have lost that, and that would have gone into the regular contemporary world cinema part of the festival. I don't necessarily know if I could champion that in Danger After Dark. That was actually, interestingly, one of the advantages of those 2 years that I did with QFest, where it was sort of like, hey, you can do anything. Are there gay people in it? No? Fuck it, go ahead. I mean, you can have whatever you want for Danger After Dark, and that was entirely, so I didn't have to worry about that then. In the old years, well, actually, I'll name something. I always was really interested in documentaries in Danger After Dark, and that was something that was very difficult for me to do in Philadelphia Film Festival, because of course those would have to be, vetted by, the documentary people, Jennifer Steinberg and other people before that. Actually, just a side note, someone asked me a couple weeks ago if I'd ever not selected a film for Danger After Dark because I was afraid of what the audience reaction was going to be, and there was only one time I did that. And it was in 2002, and it was a documentary. And if any of you want to look this up online, I actually think you can watch the entire thing on YouTube, and if you do, Godspeed. It's a Japanese film called Orozco the Embalmer. which is a shock documentary where they went to a horrible little impoverished small town in the country of Colombia and followed the town's only mortician as he, oh God, as he, have you seen this movie? He was the person that was in charge of taking care of all the dead bodies in the town, and he had a hernia and he was dying as the film was being made, and he couldn't like lift the bodies up on the table, so he would just drag these bodies up from the back of a truck and put them in like this horrible pit, and then like embalm them by shoving old newspapers in them. It was the most disgusting thing you've ever seen in your life. But I mean, it was a really fascinating documentary on its own terms. I mean, I liked it, but I remember the director was contacting us directly, which is always like a really embarrassing thing. And I was just sort of like, yeah, I don't think I can do this, you know, because I was trying to imagine, you know, an audience that roots at divorce, and it wasn't working. So, we should probably start the movie before too long, but are there any other questions kicking around? Yes?
Were there any films that you programmed where you felt like, I mean, you programmed, but afterwards they just sort of went over the line for some people, or you got complaints about? Was there anything in particular?
No, actually, you know, the funny thing is, one of my goals every year programming Danger After Dark was always to offend people and get people to walk out, and no one ever did. I mean, year after year, I would be like, you know, hey, here's this, you know, collection of vintage French silent porn reels from the 1920s where someone was fucking a dog. No one moved. You know, an entire theater, there was like, no one changed their expression. You know, okay, well, we tried this Japanese S&M movie, Flower and Snake, where, you know, people were being tied up and beaten and whipped for 2 hours. No reaction at all. It could have been fucking Howard's End for these people. No, I mean, nothing.
Actually, kind of boring.
Yeah, well, okay, well, there you go. So no, nothing. The only time, actually, I heard about this secondhand. I don't know if any of you saw a Japanese movie we did called 2LDK. Well, it's a movie about these two roommates who, it's only like 70 minutes long. There's these two roommates who have a terrible antagonistic relationship and basically like beat each other to death throughout the entirety of the film. And it was a sold-out house at Ritz East, and I was told that at some point, I was not privy to this, that someone in the back row stood up and screamed, "You people need to go to church," and then walked out of the theater. And I asked, I was like, was he referring to the characters in the film or the people in the audience? And I was not able to get an answer, but that's the closest I ever got. So. Anything? Or are we done? You want to see the movie?
Oh, there's one in the back.
One in the back.
All right, so what do you think about the future of the larger Philadelphia film festivals, the ones run by the Film Society? And is there any hope?
Answer truthfully.
Huh.
Because I think they fucking suck. I mean, it's been pretty bad.
Again, I know some of those people, and they really do mean well. These are people that like film, and you know, they're very well intentioned. They're nice people. I think that there's a contingency of Philadelphia arts and cultural society here that gravitates more towards doing things that are very conventional and within the lines, you know, of, you know, what people expect, you know, and I think that their view of the Philadelphia Film Festival is that it's going to be, you know, part of the Philadelphia theater and arts and cultural community, and a bunch of people that'll get arts grants to, you know, go to film festivals around the world and do a bunch of crap that doesn't matter, but they live on the main line and they marry money, so who gives a fuck? And I think that that's ultimately... I think it's that bad, I'm sorry. You know, I think that that's going to be the direction things take, unless there are going to be people that step forward and say, no, we are really not content with seeing Silver Linings Playbook 2 weeks before its nationwide opening, because Bradley Cooper's mother is here, we don't really give a fuck. And unless that happens, nothing against that movie or Bradley Cooper, then, you know, you're going to have the same type of stuff. So, you know, I don't know exactly how to answer that, because, you know, I can like say Philadelphia Film Festival, blah, 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 and I can say terrible things, but I mean, they're nice people. They do the work that apparently fits something that is in demand for a lot of people. Not me. I don't know how many people here, but a lot of people. So.
It just seems like everything you've done has emulated some of the bigger film festivals that do it right, especially in terms of genre film.
Everything I've done, or everything?
Everything you've done. Yeah, yeah. You introduced me to a lot of really awesome, amazing stuff. And
Well,
you seem to be like one of the few people in terms of that arena in Philly that were doing it.
Well, this goes into another topic. I don't want to drone on to endlessly before we start the movie and everything, but this also goes into how valid doing genre film programs and film festivals really are anymore. And I don't want to be too cynical or jaded about that, but I mean, I remember, when I started in 2000, 2001, I remember being on the phone with the international sales agent for a movie called, I don't know if you ever seen Ginger Snaps.
Yeah.
And this person I was on the phone with was literally confused that I would want to program this movie for a film festival. They did not understand that, and I would try to get the early Takashi Miike films, and they were also like, you want what? And it was very not part of the program for international distribution of those films at that time. Now, I don't have cable right now, but I mean, as far as I know, there's a Takashi Miike channel on demand on Comcast. It's changed a lot. So it becomes a question of, are film festivals and genre film programs and film festivals really valid? Are they really needed? And I've had doubts about that myself. I'm not entirely 100% sure. I would like to think they are, but I don't know. So yeah, I don't know where it goes from here. So yeah, I think it was one other question. Then we should probably wrap it up. Yeah.
Why is it such a hard sell to get the genre to the festival, both festivals or whatever, to sell them on the idea when I've gone to the Danger After Dark stuff forever, and there were tons of huge sales. It seemed like some of the biggest turnouts were, like I said, for a lot of the Danger After Dark stuff. Not as much as the Crawford fest, but that seemed in part just because people didn't know that it was
Right,
going on.
right, yeah.
But why is it such a hard sell to get them to be interested in that?
Because it's not really. It's amazing to me that it's 2013, and you would like to think that people don't have this view anymore, because there are university courses taught about genre films, and you would like to think that genre films, the lowest grade genre films are still sort of treated as some sort of valuable cultural artifact now, but there's still within the film festival community this sense that they are the other, capital T, capital L. They're sort of a gutter interest. It's not something to really be pursued or taken seriously, And in fact, there's almost sort of a quality there where it's like, okay, this is what we have to make money. It's not something that we should take seriously as part of the festival. This is something that will generate revenue, but there is sort of like the bastard stepchild, and that, to be honest, I felt that way with Danger After Dark. 12 years, I always sort of felt that way. That it was sort of like, oh, you're separate from, the festival. Please start after a certain time of night when, the drug addicts and ex-cons and transients that make up your audience can get out of the shelter and come to the theater and play some part with the rest of us. So, there was always a little bit of an element of that, which is a shame, but, that's what it is.
So just quickly to wrap things up, without naming the film we're about to watch, what were some of your highlights of your programming run?
It's funny, we were talking about that a few weeks ago. It's a shame that I couldn't remember. All my old program guides, the printed guides, are boxed up in storage, so I was trying to think of it in memory, and I was like, well, the Park Chan-wook stuff, like Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and Old Boy, Ginger Snaps. Probably the biggest one was that I was able to do that Shaw Brothers retrospective. That was like, that we were able to pull that off in Danger After Dark was great. Female convict Scorpion Jailhouse 41 and Ginger Snaps the first year. Offbeat stuff too, like there was an Estonian film we screened a couple years ago called Temptation of St. Tony, which...
Amazing movie.
Well, you were the only people that went, so thank you. That was a favorite of mine. And in fact, when we started, and something that, again, I do acquisitions for exploitation films now. So Danger After Dark kind of bled into exploitation with me a couple years ago going, okay, well, I don't want to do so much Karate Robo Zebergar, although I like that movie. And I want to do a little more Dogtooth, The Mare, Enter the Void, that kind of stuff. So the mixture of those things was like real gratifying to see. So,
All right, so we have a long movie ahead of us.
it is a full 2 hours, almost down to the second. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
It is a great
please
film.
stick around. We're just going to take like a 2-minute break. Feel free to help yourself to chips and popcorn. There's refreshments over there. All right, please give a hand to Travis Crawford.